When I was growing up during the 1980s, we lived in this small country town called Manjimup in the southwest of Western Australia. Now, there was this shop on the main road, and I still remember walking up and down past it. There was this sign on the door which had this phrase, "It's okay to look, but not touch." And the idea was, of course, you could go into the shop, you could look at the things on the shelf as long as you didn't go up and touch the things on the shelf. But that phrase, "it's okay to look but not touch," was also a phrase that was being used by people to define the boundaries of commitment in a relationship with someone else, whether you had a boyfriend or girlfriend or a husband or wife. And the idea was, if you saw someone else outside that relationship and you looked to them and you thought, wow, they're amazing, you started to think about that person, you started to fantasize, that wasn't really a problem. It was only a problem if you physically got into an adulterous relationship with that person. It was okay to look, but not touch. Now, when we get to the Sermon on the Mount, Christ gives a teaching that right now, for the modern person, it is a harsh bar to hear. It's an uncomfortable teaching. He talks about adultery in these terms. "You've heard that it was said, 'Do not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to throw into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell." If you've seen in social media a report that some celebrity has been cheating on their husband or wife, and this comes out in the media, the social media is prepared to pile it on that person, condemn them, mock them, shame them. We see that as adultery. But how would it be if social media suddenly piled on condemnation on that level on every person who had looked at someone with eyes of lust? Pretty much most people, particularly men, would be condemned. Now, it's not me singling out men, by the way. If you look at the teaching that Christ gives, he's actually directing his warnings at men. He's talking about males here, their capacity to look at women lustfully. But Christ is still trying to take in that type of lustful looking at a woman, and he's trying to elevate it into the same basket as physical adultery. And this is so deeply confronting, because what Christ is saying is the vast majority of men, and a number of women included, have committed adultery many, many times and have pushed themselves to the very boundary of experiencing the same consequences as physical adultery. Now, whether there's been research into Jesus' teaching, there was certainly nothing when Jesus was giving this. There was no evidence Jesus could have given to prove to the people who were listening to him that it was not okay to look and touch. But we do have evidence now. There has been significant research into this issue in the last 20 plus years in culture in the world. And the reason there's been research into it is because of the phenomena and the increase of pornography. Pornography is one of the most difficult subjects to talk about because it's just so prevalent. Back when I was a young teenager in the 1980s, pornography was there, but it was sort of limited to physical magazines, which you had to go and buy either from some news agents, which was hidden behind the counter. So there was probably that shame and embarrassment of having to do that stopped you. But then came the video stores, and then in the 90s came the internet. And with the internet, things changed forever. It entered straight into the home. And anyone who's got a phone can access pornography within 2 clicks. The research that has now been going on, that has been looking into the impact of visual sightings, looking at something lustfully, the impact that has come forward in the research is horrific. You can go and do your own research on this. it's worth looking at that, because once you come to grips with this and you see what they are now coming up with on the psychological and the spiritual impact it has on people, is quite profoundly dangerous. It is bordering on being a drug. And so when Jesus talks here about the extremities of visual adultery, he's saying that the consequences of this can lead to the same destructiveness of what you see when it becomes physical adultery. The research that's been coming out points to the fact that if a man is addicted to pornography, the chances of him going through a divorce is now doubled. It is such a damaging thing. But Jesus here in his teaching from 2,000 years ago is ahead of the game. He's warning that there are consequences for that type of addiction, that type of lifestyle that will lead you into a very dangerous, very sad place. Because ultimately what we're really looking for is for love. Everyone wants love. Everyone wants to feel special. Everyone wants to have that sense of connection with someone. But what pornography and visual adultery offers is a fantasy that doesn't exist. It's something that is not real and not satisfying the very heart of your soul. It doesn't give you the love and the heart that you're looking for. What Christ is doing in his teachings, he's trying to call people back to start looking at each other through the same eyes that God looks at people. There is physical beauty in people, and we should be able to look back and see the physical beauty of people and enjoy that. But there's a significant difference between admiring the physical beauty of someone and looking at someone lustfully. Billy Graham, the American evangelist, was once asked, what's the difference between looking at someone and admiring their beauty and looking at someone lustfully? And he said, the difference is about 2 seconds. But when we start looking at people through the eyes of Christ, we actually see the real beauty in people. We see something that goes beyond skin deep. My mum passed away about 5 years ago now. At the funeral, my sister was in charge of finding a photograph to represent Mum on the coffin, and she chose this photograph of Mum when she was in her 20s. My mum had this beautiful red hair and youthful looks, and she thought that'd be the best photo to put to represent who Mum was. But my dad saw the photograph before the funeral. My dad had been married to Mum for 50 years. And he said to my sister, I don't want that photo. I want this photo instead. And the photo that he handed to my sister was a photo of Mum in her mid-70s. The ravages of chemotherapy had taken its toll. You could see her skin had a different colour. Her hair had thinned out. And my dad said, that's the photo I want on the coffin. He explained to my sister that the photograph of Mum when she was young was of someone he didn't know anymore. The person that he loved was the person who was in her 70s, who had been ravaged by cancer, whose hair had been thinned out. This was the person he loved. And when Christ calls us to look at people through the same eyes as his, he's calling us to go to a much deeper place than what they visually look like, but instead to see the very person that is within.